vast, values across space and time. So my name is Petasis. I'm the VAST coordinator from NCSR Demokritos in Athens. And I'm going to talk about the VAST project and, things about, us capturing and digitizing the experiences. Okay, so VAST is a European research project funding under the Advanced Digitization Call. And the vision that we have in VAST is to actually capture and digitize things that are related about values in artifacts of cultural heritage that are mainly intangible. So what we aim is to research, to digitize, and promote awareness towards, a wider understanding of the ideals, the principles, and the values that are embedded in our cultural heritage, and particularly those that are, underpinning the European integration, promoting heritage education and interpretation. The VAST project is actually divided into two main dimensions. The first dimension is what we call in VAST the past of values, which actually involves the analysis of intangible artifacts, mainly things mainly from theater, like, for example, ancient Greek drama, from science, 17th century scientific revolution documents, and folklore, European fairy tales. And after we analyze, we use this information in order to drive the activities that are related to what we call in VAST the present of values, which actually focuses on the analysis, collection, and digitization of how values and messages are communicated and are perceived today. So the project has 3 pilots that actually concentrate of, specific points in history, and but also specific types of engaging of citizens, with intangible artifacts. The first pilot concentrates on theater, and more specifically the ancient Greek drama. So it involves, the analysis of plays that comes from a specific period in the European history. And based on that, it creates activities and collects and digitizes experiences of both communicators and also audiences. The second pilot is about science and concentrates, in the scientific revolution that happened in the 17th century. So it, analyzes texts from the era, like, texts from Copernicus, Moon, Galileo, and involves also a lot of activities regarding the present of values through education and museum visits. And the third pilot concentrates on folklore, starting from European fairy tales, starting with the period of the fairy tales of the Grimm brothers, but not limited there, having also narratives from across the Europe and more recent than that. So the heart of the heart of the project is what we call the VAST digital platform, which actually has 3 main objectives. That is to create valuable knowledge from what we have collected and analyzed in order to be reused, and be the tool and the vehicle to increase the awareness about values, and then to try to infuse professional activities with values. So I'm going to explain what all this means. So underneath the VAST digital platform, we see that there are 3 main areas. The first area is concerned with the digitization. The digitization of the information can have, 2 forms. Either you implement completely digital activities using, software, using games, serious ones, or games that have a purpose. And, this actually arrange all the technicalities to collect the information to be digitized. But then you can use, a more traditional approach, like, follow the pen and paper approach, which, of course, you need then additional work in order to digitize the collected material. And you can use a hybrid approach where, some parts are in a digital forms and some parts are in non-digitized forms, which all this information has been collected, it needs to be collected. So we have actually created specific applications to support the curators of this information, which start with a generic one that actually can digitize everything, either in paper or in digital. And then there are, on top of that, there are specific applications that are targeted to specific activities and, help digitizing more easy the various information. So we have, a basic application, a generic application, and on top of that, we have, a plethora of additional applications that are more specialized to specific types of gathering information. Then we have our knowledge graph, where, all this collected information is covered, and all the digital artifacts are stored. So actually it has two parts. It has a digital assets management tool, but also it has the component that's based on an RDF graph. So a knowledge graph, actually. And then the third part of the platform is what we call exploration, where you can actually browse this data, see this data, perform analysis of the data, but also find other interesting information. So the knowledge graph actually supports, both the past of values and the present of values, and an overview what we currently have in our knowledge graph. We start with a part of the graph is about mappings, which, in VAST, actually, we don't impose a vocabulary, but we try to somehow collect also vocabulary from our audiences. So we collect a lot of keywords. So here is an effort to try to map these keywords to various known vocabularies and theories. So, for example, there are mappings that map keywords to the degree possible, either manually or automatically, for example, to Schwarz values. Then we have a part of the knowledge graph that is about the past of values. So it's the area where, we analyze the artifacts by experts. And typically this connects the artifacts themselves, the annotations we have collected over the values, but also include other metadata, like, summaries where the artifacts come from, provenance, and, various analysis results also attached to these artifacts. And then there are parts of the knowledge graph that actually relate to the present of values, which the present of values actually try to digitize how these values are put in use, how they are communicated in today, and how, the people who engage with what we create, the activities that we create, actually we collect and digitize their experiences. So there, the activities and the events where these activities materialize are very important. So you find description about there, where you can see, for example, the steps of an activity, the stimuli used for each step, and then there are the tools that we are using and how, these tools actually get the results. So we have, result answers from questionnaires. We have mind maps created from people. We have values, annotation of values created by the audience's non-experts. We have stories. We have user-generated artifacts, like drawings, pictures, nice images. And of course, we have documentation. And this documentation actually is, again, in the graph and relates on how somebody else can take the activities, customize, and apply them to a new setting. So this is, in general, what we have inside our graph. So the past of values. Actually, what we do is that we annotate the artifacts with values, which actually tries to somehow enhance the knowledge we have about the past, respecting to values. For example, try to capture this in narratives and try to have, I cannot say objective, but, various dimensions of the interpretation of these artifacts encoded into values. And of course, what we actually embraced and highlighted is the diversity of opinions. So we try to be as inclusive as possible into the interpretation of the artifacts and, the encoding of the values. And of course, this is the basis for the second part of the project. So all our activities and our methodologies are derived from the analysis of these artifacts. So we have the 3 pilots, we have our artifacts analyzed, and all the activities that follow in the present of values actually derive from these things. I'm out of time.
No.
Not yet. So regarding the present of values, actually what we do is, we try to reuse what has been annotated and has been, tagged in the past of values in order to create new activities. And we have done a series, of things with always having the goal in mind that we want to raise awareness on values. We want to raise awareness on the diversity of values and try to put audience in a position to think about the values of other visitors. So we start, of course, with the activities that are happening inside the museums. For example, one of the tools is the museum exhibit. Okay, so we have created exhibits inside the museum. So here you can see, for example, an exhibit that has been created from VAS to the Island Lyceum, which is an organization that participates in the project through NCSR Demokritos, and is a digital exhibition that tries actually to exhibit something that is intangible, philosophical ideas. So this is an experience, a group experience for visitors, where, you come and through, the exhibits, which are completely digital, we discuss things about ideas, and this is about, rule of law and through the trial of Antigone. And, this is how we try, to have public engagement for all people, so inclusive for everybody who visits a museum. Then, inside again the museum, we have another, beyond exhibits, we have educational activities. So in all museums that participate in the project, the Island Lyceum, IMSS, Museo Galileo in Florence, the Fairy Tale Museum, and festival, it's another, okay. So we have created applications that actually engaging and empower younger generations. So we have created activities for all ages, from, pupils to adults. And there you see there have been various things like, live performances inside museum where, participate in the educational activities or activities supported by digital applications. Then we try to create activities in the arts. So, for example, we have created performances, theatrical performances, like, for example, Antigone of Sophocles, that was put up as a play, and we have captured the experience of the visitors and how the messages we've communicated with this performance, with theatrical performance, have been collected and digitized. But it's not only that. We have created experiences also in other performances, not created by us, by, various types of information, like, creating questionnaires, that have this goal of raising awareness on values, like creating focus groups on people who have seen other performances, or even create theatrical workshops and try, to put up people like, immigrants, to put up theatrical performances themselves. And this is done within, the consortium members, but it's not only that. We have tried to create activities outside of the consortium. So we have created educational programs that, we're doing for free to schools, all levels of schools, mainly high schools and universities. So we have engaged with a lot of external schools, and we have done activities in various countries of the project. because we want to break the barriers, to the access. We're not waiting also only, the visitors to come to us, but we try to also go to the visitors. And we have done a lot of activities that are tailor-made to museums and art institutions outside of the project. So we have co-created activities for them, with them, based on the VAST methodology, and we have implemented them. What I can say about, all these activities that we have done is, that all the activities are very well accepted from the audiences. So we can see that, there is a lot of recognition, and actually we put the audiences in trying to think about values, trying to think about, things that they have not thought about themselves even. So we have been very positive reactions from all, the activities we have engaged. And that's it for me. So thank you very much. Any questions?
So thank you very much. I'm going to give you a short overview on the project InTaVia. As you see, the title Smashing the Silos is nothing I invented for today, but we had a conference with this title in Graz in July. And the title Integrating Cultural Databases in the InTaVia Knowledge Graph is this kind of main idea that we have in our project. So the project InTaVia stands for Intangible European Heritage, Visual Analysis, Curation, and Communication. And you can see here our consortium, which spreads across whole Europe. And several of them are here too today. So the main idea of InTaVia is that we already have several digitized cultural resources which made their way from the libraries out there to the web. But if we take a look at the resources that we have in the web, that we see that we have got this kind of data silos. So there are databases for cultural objects, and efforts like Europeana or the European Data Space for Cultural Heritage help to integrate those. But there are many contextual historical information that are not integrated yet. And that's the aim of InTaVia, to bring those two together and to integrate this kind of silos that you currently have. So we want to have an integrated platform that brings together cultural objects on the one side, and on the other side, this contextual knowledge, and more specifically within InTaVia, that's biographical information, so information on actors who are related to the cultural objects. The databases that we use and that we integrate are 4 prosopographical databases, so biography portals from Slovenia, Austria, the Netherlands, and Finland. And on the object side, we once said we are going to use Europeana, but somehow in the random of the project, we realized that's really difficult. So we used also Wikidata as a second source to manage. We aim to support very different users. So we don't only try to work for specialists who have got knowledge in how to access such knowledge graph, but also people who have no digital background, people working in museums, practitioners in cultural heritage, tourists, tourist guides. So a very broad group of users that are addressed here. What are the user practices we want to support? We want to help them to search for cultural information, to compile and create some information that is interesting for them, then analyze that on a visual basis, and finally to communicate that as well.
The Zoom is not maximized. We can maximize it, so sure.
Yeah.
So we are seeing the background.
Yeah. So that's the overview on our project that you can see here. So we have got on the one side object collections, on the other side biographical collections, and they made their way to existing databases which are harmonized and integrated in the InTaVia knowledge graph. And we make access to that knowledge graph via 3 different tools that we provided: a data curation lab for search and curation, a visual analytics studio for visual analysis of the data, and a storytelling suite for communication. So that is on the expert side, but we also want to figure out how end users can make use of that information in the end. That's the knowledge graph, the state of it end of June, actually. So some things changed since then. I think Matthias is going to present you the current status and also the information on the technological building of this knowledge graph. Currently, we have got 22 million triples there, so there are about 100,000 actors. And as you can see here, a huge difference in the number of cultural objects from Wikidata and from Europeana. So you see already the difficulties we had to connect to Europeana. So we expected to have 3 million objects from Europeana and a couple from Wikidata, but things turned out differently. And we have got about 25,000 places, which also are important connectors of people who have been at the same place. How does the platform look like? That's the interface for search and curation. So here you can just search for any terms, persons, objects, whatever you want. And you can create a collection on the right side of entities that are of interest of you, but also can edit that and curate the information if you recognize that the information in the knowledge graph is not correct or has contradicting information and you want to integrate that. That's the way you can do it here. But that's also only locally. So it's only local editing that you can do. You cannot manipulate the knowledge graph. That's something we decided early on. You have got also this kind of close reading, and I will show you that. So you will see a portrait that is in there, some media related. You will see where you will find the person that you're interested in, and then you will also see some visualization. So you can see the ego network of that person. You can see on the map where the person was active and the timeline of the life of that person, but also a list of all the relations that we know about and also the original biography. Sorry, I want to show that once more. So for the visual data analysis, you can now select entities and visualize them in a very flexible way on maps, on timelines, on network visualizations. I'm not going to go into detail there. There's some publications about it already, but just as an impression. And finally, you can use that for visualization-based storytelling. So here you see only the viewer. There's a creator within the tool where you can put together all the information, the visualizations that you get generated, media that you have on the persons, and input some text and also some HTML elements, some quizzes, and put that online as a web app or also as a mobile app. I just want to come up with some challenges as our project is coming to an end already this month. Some of the challenges that we met is we did see that this kind of data on biographies and objects is scattered and siloed, and so we think it's really important to have this kind of data linking to bring them together based on some shared entities. We found it mostly that this data is not human readable. So especially for experts who don't have got the technical expertise, we think it's important to have usable interfaces like visualization, but also stories for the public that make this data accessible. The texts that we have, they are often very long and rich of details, but they are also very relevant for the experts. So we need to have some scalable reading so to let the experts get back to the original sources, even if we have got structured data and build on those. The data is most of the time very scarce. So that's why we decided for this manual curation and also enrichment options within our knowledge graph. Data is oftentimes uncertain and contested. So we have got this kind of multiple instances of the same entity that we discussed, and how we could work with those and make that explicit. I think that's one of the challenges that we didn't solve in our project, but I think that's something that is still a to-do for the community. Then also that data is autotelic, so it's really relevant to have close-up views, to have an aesthetic interface and a high user experience. I think that's something that we should really work on, and not only have got some access to the backend, but really have got this very good interface as well. We have got very different users, and they have got very different expectations. So we need exploratory, analytic, and narrative tools so that we can serve multiple of the user groups. And we also want to say that data and tools are non-neutral, so we have to be critical about the data and the tools that we use and that we provide, and always have got this kind of reflection with our user groups, what they see as useful, as not useful, where they see some critical aspects also of what we do. And only sometimes the data and the digital tools are relevant, so we shouldn't say we have got only digital humanities, but we should go towards the post-digital humanities here and really have this kind of tools as one way to go, but not the only way, and see that we combine the traditional and the digital approaches to the humanities. So that's it already. I want to thank you on behalf of the whole team. You have got here the link to the website where you will also find the platform. This is our Twitter use, but you can also try it on your mobile phone and explore some of the stories in the web app. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is a map.
So hello everybody. Today I am going to present you odeuropa project, and the project is running for 3 years already. It's going to finish in December 2023. And here you can see the project partners. The project is coordinated by the institution in Netherlands, and here in Slovenia, Josef Stefan Institute is one of the project partners. And the main goals of the project are to develop methods for identifying olfactory references in large-scale digital image and text collections across European regions in 17th to early 20th century. We would like also to create digital and multisensory resources to allow different stakeholders and audiences to freely access and interact with projects' data and storylines. We also create measurable standards and best practices for olfactory heritage science. We educate and train cultural heritage professionals, and also develop policy recommendations. When we started with the project, we actually decided to formulate a number of competency questions. We asked historians, librarians, also digital heritage practitioners questions about smells. We asked what smells were significant in the past, what kind of practices produce smells, how did people use noses, what kind of experiences they had. We also asked what meanings had smells, which emotions were associated with smells, and how we could connect text and images to smells. In the project, we use a number of different methods and techniques related to the tasks. Those are methods related to text analysis, image analysis, artificial intelligence. We also use computational linguistics, sensory mining, and history and olfactory heritage involvements. But finally, we develop the European Olfactory Knowledge Graph. This is a knowledge graph which is based on olfactory information derived from historical images, paintings, drawings, and texts, novels, scientific texts, journals, diaries. And finally, the project is in the final stage, right? So we already have a big knowledge graph developed, and also a user interface which connects to this knowledge graph. Okay, I would like now to mention a number of challenges and experiences associated with development of our knowledge graph. we already heard in the previous presentation from InTaVia, their challenges, right? So we kind of had the same challenges in this project, right? So first of all, we needed to obtain the balanced corpora in multiple languages. We also had a challenge with obtaining and development of annotated data sets for text and images. We need to integrate a number of different vocabularies. And finally, specifically my challenge, I deal with emotion detection. So we had a lot of challenges with emotion detection. Those are more or less technical challenges, but I think we successfully managed to overcome these challenges in this project. We constantly add the new information to the knowledge graph. We use the annotated data sets which we obtained, and we create our own annotated data sets. We integrate more and more vocabularies related to smells, and we developed a new methodology for emotion detection, which is specifically for fiction and literary works for historical data. I would like also to mention a couple of methods related to semantics and using RDF. So as I already mentioned, we developed a number of multilingual vocabularies in the project. Project partners created vocabularies for olfactory objects, gestures, fragrance spaces, and noses. This was created by us in different languages, in English, German, French, Italian, Dutch, and Slovene. But we also integrated a lot of controlled vocabularies, which you can see on the left side. Those are vocabularies related to olfactory experiences, and smell professionals are very much aware of these vocabularies. So the methods for text analysis. On the left side, you can see a number of data sets we are working with, which we processed, and it's a long list of data sets. And on the right side, you can see frame elements which we extract from this data. So we extract information related to smells. Smell words, smell sources, qualities, evoked odorants, location, perceivers, time, circumstances, and effects. We do this from multilingual datasets. And I would like also to highlight here that in Slovenia, we also work with a dataset called DLIP, and we collaborate with National University Library of Slovenia. What we use for text analysis is also annotation process. It was already mentioned how important this annotation process is in other presentations and questions. In our project, we use a tool called Inception to create our own annotated data sets. It's very user-friendly tool. Here you can see an example from a snapshot from the tool, how the annotation process happened. So the user annotated, in this case, some smell word stinking, and then some frame elements related to the smell word. Channels, standing legs, polluted spaces, and some other smell elements. Yes, here is like a snapshot from National University Library of Ljubljana. We are collaborating with, they're very helpful in everything. And yeah. And so another text challenge with the project is emotion detection. As I mentioned, we developed a new methods. It covers 38 emotions, and it's specific for odeuropa datasets. It's multilingual and multi-label classifier. And here's you can see a picture, a snapshot of emotion correlation, basically which emotions correlate with each other. It's if you would look a little bit closer, right, you would see that positive emotions usually correlate with positive ones, and negative with negatives. But specifically in this project, we cover such emotions as nostalgia, which is very important for historians, but it's rarely found in annotated datasets. So that's maybe one of the unique characteristics of odeuropa. And regarding the image analysis, we do a lot of work also for object detection. We do work with spaces detection, gestures detection, and now the partners started to work also on emotions in images. One of the main results of odeuropa is odeuropa Smell Explorer, which is based on the knowledge graph. It's basically the interface to the knowledge graph, and it covers 6 languages. It has over 2 million smell experiences from 450,000 textual resources, and also from 100,000 paintings. It continues to grow. Since we process new text collections and image collections, and we add to the knowledge graph, and it's shown in this tool. And I recommend you to test you on the link which is provided here. And here is one example from Slovenian data source. It shows the interface of the tool, right? It has one textual excerpt, and also it shows some qualities, language, smell source found in this excerpt, in this textual resource. And one example from images, and you can see how image is annotated, what we discovered in this image. So it's naturemort, right? And you can see fish and lemon and wine bottles, which are very smelly objects. Another important result for odeuropa is Encyclopedia of Smell History and Heritage. It's going to be launched in November, this November. And the entries of the storylines in the encyclopedia are drawn on the databases of historical texts and images processed by the project. So the focus is on European history between 1600 and 1920. And we also have the olfactory storytelling toolkit, which is going to be launched in November. And it's a how-to guide for working with smells in museum and other heritage institutions. Basically, it's a starting point for some cultural heritage professionals using smell as storytelling techniques. And one of the complementary results is called a smell news tracker. This is a tool which allows us to track news from different areas related to smells and also related to this project specifically. It covers all possible languages which you can find in Wikipedia. And finally, there will be a final event which is called Smell Culture Fair in November, end of November 2023 in Amsterdam. And we would like to invite all professionals to attend this event. Registration is already open. You will learn a lot about smells and also about how to deal with data related to smells. And of course, it will be an event for digital professionals and cultural professionals. Yes, thank you.
So I'm Jacopo Berardinis from King's College London, and today I'm going to tell you about the Polifonia project. And our motto is playing the soundtrack of our history. We will see why in a second. So Polifonia in a nutshell. Our goal is essentially to bring together music, people, places, events from the 16th century by pioneering an open and interconnected music knowledge graph on the web. Here there is an overview of the partners in Polifonia, and as you can imagine, it's quite an interdisciplinary project. So we have computer scientists, musicologists, ethnomusicologists, catalogers, musical heritage archivists, and so on. So this makes the project particularly interesting and appealing because of the added value of all this perspective, but at the same time quite complex, and we will see why. We have 10 pilots, 10 partners, 8 work packages, and 58 deliverables. We are also approaching the end, like odeuropa. We'll be closing in April 2024, and we started probably at the same time, so in January 2021. Here is an overview of the Polifonia stakeholder network. As you can see, it's including music industry, stakeholders, academic institutions, cultural heritage institutions, and so forth. So it's quite a broad and diversified playground focused on music data. So this is an overview of the 10 pilots in Polifonia, which are basically under work package 1. It's also dealt with the aspects related to the coordination of the project. And the pilots are basically case studies defining applications and defining the requirements behind those applications. And from the requirements, Work Package 2 develops ontologies and knowledge graph to address those specific needs, and also to interconnect the knowledge which is found from musical sources ranging from manuscript to music scores, recordings, and so forth. And that's indeed the focus of Work Package 3 for computational music analysis and for Work Package 4 in the context of knowledge extraction from text. So once we have all these knowledge graphs deployed to address the specific needs for the pilots, we finally enable their exploration through interfaces, which is indeed the focus of Work Package 5. So let's start with an overview of the pilots, of the 10 pilots in Polifonia. So we have pilots addressing musical heritage requirement, in particular modeling musical instruments, in particular the organs and bells pilots focusing on describing very specific aspects of organs and bells, organs in particular for Dutch organs taken from a very large encyclopedia. And the pilot is led by Peter van Kranenburg from KNAF and the Merton Tunes Institute. Then we have the bells pilot, which is instead locating bells and also modeling very specific aspects of their construction, their material, and their evolution through time. And this is in collaboration with the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage. Then we also have tonalities and tunes, so pilots which are looking at specific musical content, so identifying patterns, similarities in music, explaining why certain patterns or why certain properties are actually traced from the score. So if we look, for example, at tonalities, we are contributing systems for annotating musical scores. So that's a starting point. We have different scores from different collections, and we want to enable stakeholders to have musical conversations about these scores, to basically confront their interpretations about specific properties that can be identified in the music. And in particular case of tonalities, we are talking about cadences. How does tonalities achieve this? Through modeling musical theories. And at the moment, we have models of Pretorius and Zarlino with our ontologies, and then we can use our ontologies for reasoning, and so for finding specific properties. And this is done in a totally explainable way. Tunes instead is interested in modeling melodic collection, finding similarities, melodic similarities, and so tracing the origins of music back to folk music, so to see how folk music influenced current music through similarities. Then we have facets and interlink. Facets is building system for the exploration of musical documents, so interfaces where people can actually search large corpora, musical corpora, via musical queries. So you can define a melodic pattern, you can define a rhythmic pattern, and find the music matching your search. Interlink instead is working on connecting complementary musical knowledge across different stakeholders. You see some of them in this slide, and has the vision of bridging musical heritage with music industry by developing state-of-the-art linking methods. We then have meetups and child. Meetups looking for tracing the encounters between musical artists in Europe and tracing key points of cultural and musical exchange. So seeing meetings as catalyst for musical change. Instead, child is looking at the retrieval, the collection, curation, and exploration of documentary evidence for listening experiences. Here we are looking particularly at the listening experience database, which has been recontextualized for childhood experiences for the specific pilot of stories experienced in Britain. Finally, we have Access and Music Pop. So Access is developing interactive tools to visualize harmony, which are extremely useful for educational purposes. And when connected with new interfaces, so haptic interfaces, they're enabling new possibilities. So music listening experiences, engaging music listening experiences, which also support hearing impaired users. Finally, MusicPo is a specific pilot in Polifonia, which is focusing on Bologna's musical heritage. So is looking at processing musical manuscripts from Bologna, looking at encounters and performance and events. So you see a lot of overlap with the other pilots. It's just a specific application for the musical knowledge in Bologna from the archives. So how do we enable all these applications? So requirements coming from different stakeholders, different experts, and putting them all together into knowledge graph that can talk to each other. So this has been a big challenge in Work Package 2, and I want to tell you this story because I think it's something that can be reused in other projects. So music data is difficult to describe and aggregate. And in Work Package 2, we had to talk to different stakeholders, domain experts, which had different views about the requirements in Polifonia, coming from the pilots which I showed you before. So their requirements can be totally contrasting. They're definitely complementary, but they can also collide to each other. And defining ontologies that can address all these requirements is quite challenging. So if we look at the landscape of music ontology, we will see that before Polifonia, there were several ontologies focused on specific aspects of music with a few problems. And as you can see from this slide, the connection between these ontologies is quite limited. So what happens if, for example, I want to reuse 2 or more ontologies from the literature? Here we see a particular music ontology, which was released in 2007, the music ontology indeed, focused on modeling discographic music data, and the Doremus ontology, which instead focused on classical music. We then did a survey to understand to which extent music ontologies can be reused and to which extent the community was actually agreeing with our insights, so the difficulty of reusing 2 or more ontologies. So as you can see, the findings are quite clear. So we have evidence of the difficulty and the challenging scenario of reusing the current ontology individually and also together. We also there is a lack of coverage for musical cultural heritage, and there is also a need of competency question for the specific domain. Competency question defining the requirements of those ontologies. So after this, we started looking for requirements for our ontologies. We wanted our ontology to be specific for the specific pilots, but at the same time, enabling a layer of interoperability. So a layer where we can talk about music, but without being specific to the genre and the style. And also the possibility of extending and specializing our ontologies for new requirements. The hierarchical requirement here is looking at the possibility of expressing data at different level of detail, while at the same time keeping track of provenance. So this is how we define the Polifonia ontology network, which is modular, expressive, has 4 foundational layers, which can be reused regardless of the specificity of genre and styles, is aligned to the music ontologies, to the key music ontologies, which I mentioned before, and also has software support for metadata construction. So this is an overview of the Polifonia ontology network. As you can see at the bottom, there is the core ontology, which is integrating the ontology design patterns used from other projects, but also enabling the alignment with other relevant contribution. The 4 foundational models, which I was telling you before, are the source, instrument, music meta, and music representation ontologies, which are basically enabling the interoperability of music data for textual sources, textual documents, instruments, music metadata, and also fragments of music through the music representation ontology. how did we actually build the Polifonia ontology network? So we started from our stakeholder and domain expert, and then we identified some user stories. So a user story is basically a scenario of how the stakeholders and the domain expert would actually use the ontology for specific requirements. And so a user story is built with a persona in mind, which is a fictional character that summarizes the user of this set of requirements. From the user stories, the ontology design team extracted competency question. Each competency question is abstracting a specific requirement. And these competency questions are actually mapped to ontology design patterns. Once we have more ontology design patterns, we can start building a single ontology, in this case, the music meta ontology, which is part of the ontology network. And once we have the ontology, we start testing. So we test whether competency question can address, we test if the ontology can address the specific requirements for which it was designed. And this is how a Sparkle query for testing looks like. We also designed some tools for automating this procedure because we found the whole process particularly challenging also when extracting the competency question. So making sure that the requirements that we are defining are actually compliant with the expectation from the stakeholders and the domain experts. So we designed some tools for the analysis of the competency question and to enable essentially a collaborative workflow where the domain expert and stakeholder could come back and redefine the competency question until we reach some consensus in a way. And this is done using language models. Yeah, this is an example of persona, goal, scenario for the definition of the competency question and the analysis of the competency question. And this is a website where you can find documentation about our ontologies. So we are actually contributing more and more in terms of tutorial examples and code to actually facilitate this process. And yes, this is an overview for the music meta ontology. Okay, so now we go from the Polifonia ontology network to the knowledge graphs, and this is a quick overview of a few contributions in the Polifonia project. For example, Choco, the chord corpus, which is the largest knowledge graph of human-made harmonic notation built from 18 different datasets with different formats and different notation. And basically, the interoperability is enabled by the Polifonia ontology network, which is allowing us to describe all these collections in an homogeneous way. This is an overview of the datasets, which are all integrated in Choco. So there is diversity in terms of musical genre, formats, notations, and also coverage of audio and symbolic music. And this is the workflow for integrating music datasets using our ontologies and also an intermediate representation, which is particularly used in music information retrieval research. So Choco comes into format, comes as a knowledge graph, but also comes as a GEMS dataset, which is enabling the interoperability for other kind of users. So Choco has been linked to other knowledge graphs. So for example, the MIDI link data cloud and the listening experience database. And this is enabling the exploration of connections between musical harmony and textual resources relating to experiences and also melodic content. Choco has also enabled the creation of knowledge graph for computational creativity, where basically chord progression are segmented and similarities are identified. And this is for search of harmonic pattern, to the definition of new methodologies for music generation, which are totally explainable and can be traced back to the original data. This is an overview of other outputs in Polifonia. So we have Muso, which is a registry of music data, Melody, which is a website enabling the definition of stories on knowledge graphs. We also have the Polifonia corpus, Sparkle anything for knowledge graph construction, and most importantly, the Polifonia web portal, where all our knowledge graphs are aggregated and can be searched. And this is what we are basically focusing at the moment. So to conclude, this experience has taught us that integrating data is particularly challenging, already starting from the metadata. And we would like to establish a lingua franca for addressing this particular requirement. Because if we are able to integrate collections, musical collection, at least at the level of metadata, then we can make our resources interoperable. So the takeaway message is connecting data, music data is difficult, but Polifonia has developed an ontological infrastructure to achieve this interoperability by establishing lingua franca, link large-scale knowledge graphs, which is our ongoing activity, and enable collaboration with music stakeholders, so people having totally different views, totally different requirements, but still requirements that can coexist within the framework which we have defined. And yes, this is a list of the ongoing activities. So we're extending and validating our ontologies with the music stakeholders, creating music knowledge graphs, linking them and making them available through the web portal, and also creating opportunities with other projects. So yeah, this is a picture we took just a few days ago. We had like a project meeting in Bologna. And yeah, it's just a few of us. But thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to answering all your questions.
Thank you very much. I'm a philosopher and historian based in Vienna, and I'm the coordinator of the Visual History of the Holocaust project. I'd like to thank the organizers for bringing us together and for this exchange between these projects that have so much in common. So thank you very much. I'm also glad that I'm able to be present here in Maribor. The Visual History of the Holocaust project is based on the moving images that the Allied took when they entered the concentration camps and discovered other atrocity sites. So what we have been interested in our project to a large extent is on what we call migrating images and image transformations. So in the way of how these images have been picked up by other images and incorporated and also conveyed different and similar messages. So let's, for example, take this probably very well-known image, the cover of Time magazine, which will immediately remind you of something that becomes more explicit here on the Daily Mirror cover image, which is expressively called Belsen 1902, drawing a close comparison between images that you may know from films or photographs taken in 1945 by the British Army and images taken at the detention camp in Bosnia-Herzegovina during the Yugoslavian wars. So we're interested in how these images somehow migrated from films, from raw materials to documentary films, to films like newsreels, for example, and then to images that are closer to our present day. And this may give you already an overview of the huge amount of images that may be connected, for example, to this topic of prisoners behind barbed wire reappearing, both in feature films and documentary films and in various contexts. The project Visual History of the Holocaust also has this subtitle, Rethinking Curation in the Digital Age. And I think in my presentation, I will also draw your attention to this subtitle, Rethinking Curation in the Digital Age. The project has been funded like the other projects here in the Horizon 2020 program. It started in January 2019 and was concluded this year at the end of March 23. It encompassed a large consortium of 12 Austrian, German, French, and Israeli research institutions, museums, memorial sites, and technology developers whose logos you can see on the right side. And we also had several associated partners in Germany, in France, and in the United States, and content providers, so archival documentation providers in the US, in UK, in Russia, and in other former Soviet republics. And the collections that we built are, of course, digital collections, starting with the film materials, which have not been digitized to a large scale before the project. So we went to archives in the United States, in UK, and to post-Soviet archives to digitize these films, sometimes digitize them on site together with the archives, sometimes digitize them by ourselves, having the film sent to Vienna, for example, and also including some other archives within the European Union, but the large amount of films has been kept outside the European Union. And to just give you a brief overview of the number and an idea, it's 330 individual reels of footage, meaning raw materials that have been digitized here, and 150 edited documentary films. So a number of 3.9 million files created, and roughly 146 terabytes of data. And it's 480 access copies that have been imported to our system that we created, which amount to 70 hours of films. The films, and that's one of the main aspects of the project, are our primary documents, our primary content, but they're not the only ones. They are accompanied by photographs, by text documents, by oral history interviews, and by text documents. They may start with caption sheets created by the camera operators, go to letters, reports, and other documents. And next to these primary contents, there's also what we call secondary contents, all those documents that have become part of visual culture, documentary films, fictional films, video games, even graphic novels, artworks, and even internet memes that played a crucial role during the lifetime of the project with the COVID pandemic, in particular picking up some of these images to a large extent. And so we are relating these various sources to each other. And to do that, we went back, and that's about rethinking curation in the digital age, to the very basic questions of digitization, framed with the title Advanced Digitization. And in my presentation today, I'm not going to give you a full overview of the project and what we did. So I'm going to leave out important things like automated analysis, questions of annotation through ontologies, vocabularies that we created, and so on. I'm actually focusing on the question of the intangible and intangible dimension of the project. And we took this in a very literal way and started with the tangible film reels and also other tangible objects in the documentation. So here what you see on the left side is, of course, a photograph, so not the actual film reels, but the photograph of the film reels. And on the right side, one of the archivists transforming these tangible film reels into something that can be considered intangible to some extent, digital images. And we tried to document, and not only document, but follow the entire path from identifying these documents in the archives through selection processes, through digitization processes, and post-processing through digital analysis by creating what we call an advanced digitization toolkit, and of course including many stakeholders in the field, like Library of Congress and National Archives and Records Administration, Holocaust Memorial Museums, and others. And talking about the tangible and the intangible in a digital project, of course, from our perspective, raised the question of media adequate presentations of what we digitized. And our main focus was on audiovisual media, so not limited to audiovisual media, but with audiovisual media, very specific questions on media adequate representation arise. For example, here, the question, which properties can be transferred from the analog realm to the digital realm, and which other properties could even be highlighted in the digital that may not be accessible in the analog. So, for example, what you see here is our digital film player that allows scholars to view films in what we call the archival mode, studying even the edges of the images that you would not see neither on a video presented on a DVD or screened on television, nor on an analog film projected in a movie theater, because usually those edges are hidden. Here they can be opened up, of course, only under the condition that they have been digitized before at the archive. Otherwise, they will not be available. Or you could also move to the more familiar way by hiding the edges. Or providing users the full control of the speed of films. Speed is some of the main properties of analog film as well. And studying films in detail, going frame by frame, even in slow motion or fast forward, and jumping from one image to the others and repeating each sequence or even shots to study it in a close manner. And for audiovisual media, so a main step from our perspective was to go into segmentation, so not to only talk about media objects as such, as full objects, but to be able to highlight or identify segments of interest. The project here is based on shots, so on the shot level, each individual shot created in a film, which also allows for shot-based annotation and annotating in many ways. So, of course, also including controlled vocabularies, but also creating relations to those images. And that's what we call time-based annotation to some extent, that allows scholars to pick either a certain shot or individual images and enrich these images with information. And to go one step further, something that we have already seen in other projects today, to do what we call coordinate-based annotation, so to annotate elements of an image. So here the objects identified, and objects meant in a very broad sense, also including human beings, so everything that's visible in an image. So highlighting one of them and connecting information, for example, certain properties, maybe even identifying the person and its name and relating it to the person's biography. And so this is already part of creating relations between elements of film or of other documents and other documents or knowledge about these documents. But there are other types of relations that seem to be important from the perspective of our project. So what we call vertical relations is foremost about the relation between the intangible, between the intangible aspect of the digital image and the tangible images that it's related to. So this photograph that you just saw, which played a key role in many films and other documentation of concentration camps, of course, does not only exist as a digital image. That's the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, our source archive for this image. There exists at least one black and white print and one black and white negative, and there are also other such analog copies placed at other archives. So we were looking for a database structure that allows us to put these manifestations next to each other and also to identify each item of those manifestations. And that's what we actually call vertical relations in the sense of certain abstraction levels going from a specific item, a single item, going to the level of through manifestation and creation, where certain abstract properties that are consistent with all the items and all the manifestations are cataloged. Horizontal relations are more common usually in databases. We looked for another way of presenting them and also of analyzing them. So putting, for example, here relations to persons next to a film, but also relations to events or to other objects. And this becomes even more interesting, again, if you go into the details and pick certain images, not just objects. So at the center of this image, is an image from a graphic novel, Michel Kischka's Second Generation, The Things I Did Not Tell My Father, and on the left and the right side, the images and the source materials that we were able to identify related to this image that have been integrated here. So what we created in the project is what we call a taxonomy of relations, which allows us on a very abstract level, not only to create these relations, but also to categorize these relations in a certain manner, and also to catalog to what extent the original images have been transformed, and in what way they have been transformed in relation to the image in popular culture, for example. And a specific type of horizontal relations, and one in our field of research, which is very closely connected to the question of the tangible, is what you could call mapping space and time. So what we did with the images, both with the film images, so the individual shots of the films, but also with the photographs, is trying to relate them to the actual space where they have been taken, so to the atrocity sites, by identifying certain aspects of the image. What you see here is an aerial image of the Mauthausen concentration camp, with the geographical annotation of both the films and the photographs that we obtained for this site. And if you apply a filter and go down to a single image, for example, there are three aspects that we usually try to cover: the what we call the camera viewpoint, so the exact point or more or less exact point where the image has been taken from, the camera target point, which is in some cases also an area that's visible within an image, and then a place that's identifiable by a name. In that case, it's the so-called soccer field in Mauthausen, where the image has been taken roughly. And why is it called the soccer field? You can see the goal in the background on this place, and was actually used for soccer games during while the concentration camp was operating, and it was then also used as a large burial place, which you can see in this image. And the geo annotation allows you to actually put the image right to the spot. And for educators, here's a group of educators in one of our user trials walking the site, relating the images present on tablet computers to the actual surroundings. So somehow relating what you could call the intangible of the digital image, but also of the past to the tangible of the actual sites and the presence, and by that also including different layers of time. So to conclude, within the project, our research questions were on several levels. On a structural level, they are about how do moving images shape our visual memory of the past, like, for example, the Belsen image that you saw in the beginning, and the detention camp in Bosnia. How did they migrate through time and relate to other documents types and to geographic space? On a technological level, how do we transform analog objects into digital objects and build on the gains of digitization, by at the same time avoid significant losses? And on a curatorial level, how can we foster media literate understanding of moving images and the impact, and engage on in a broader sense with complex history through digital tools? And just to put two theses on digitization that we came up with in our project. So first of all, the digitization, so there are more, but the two seem to be important for this context here of this conference. Digitization, first of all, creates hybrid media objects, and hybrid media objects are twofold objects. They consist of data, the media objects, and the metadata information about the media objects. And so what happens is through digitization, data and metadata share the same digital space. That's something that has already been addressed in one of the introductory talks today. In hybrid objects, the media object, the information about the media object constitutes a distinct but inseparable entity, phenomenological and epistemological. And that's important because I think there are really two sides of the same coin. So analog and digital objects, tangible and intangible objects, they're not just two kinds of objects. It's the same object with related with an internal relation. And information about the media object may be true or false. It will still be part of the hybrid media object, and that's meaning the annotations at a certain point can no longer be separated from the object as such, and even contradicting information will be part of the object. And the second and final thesis that I want to present here is that digitization, and that was probably already obvious from the examples that I gave and from the spotlights, favors relations over objects, and the relations are no longer secondary but constitutive for digitized objects. Meaning that the relations encompass certain kinds of relations, the relations between the digital object and the digital copy and its original, like in the example of the photographs, the data and the metadata and its sources. That's also a question that was asked several times here today. How do we relate the data to sources, the media objects and other media objects of the same kinds, and also the object and its usage. And the hybrid media object is a node in a network of relations in the end. So that's also, I think, became this visible in some of the presentations today. And from our perspective of the visual history of the Holocaust project, very important that we need to replace the concept of the authenticity with the concept of transparency and traceability of relations. That's also something that has been addressed already today. So thank you very much.
So I am project manager of ANTCOM, from Antiquity to Community. Our project has just started. It started in January, the 1st of January, 2023. And we have now, it's a doctoral network. So we have just hired the 10 PhD. So what I will do today, I will just give a short presentation about the project aims and ambitions, and who we are, where the project situates itself, and the challenges that we expect to change. So it's I want to thank you, the organizers, for this, for the opportunity to be part of this conference, and it was great to listen to the other projects. So ANTCOM is a consortium of 4 universities. The coordinator is STU, the University of Southern Denmark, and then we're working with the University of Verona, the University of Santiago de Compostela in Spain, and University of Salento. So it's a doctoral network, and we have 10 PhDs that will work on different, 10 different research projects that are, of course, all connected. So basically, ANTCOM looks at both tangible and intangible heritage in 3 main areas. The first one is textual heritage. That is, we're going to focus on material layers, fragments, and palimpsests. Palimpsests are basically, they are manuscripts that have been written over. And in this way, the stories that are preserved in the manuscript, or well, in the palimpsest, some of them are washed out by what has later been written. So it's this work package deals a lot with community stories that have been erased, basically. The second work package is linguistic heritage, because, well, the idea here is that Latin and Greek are often seen as they often have a history of power and hegemony, but in reality, we are going to look at minority languages, such as, for instance, Greco, which is a dialect of Greek that is still speaking and is still preserved, unfortunately, only orally. And we're going to work with the with the transcription of their stories and the digitalization of these documents. The third work package is about narrative heritage. And here we're going to look at the narrative and historiographical layers. So this is about stories of ancient and medieval heritage that have been then popularized and shaped by the national traditions. So the idea of the project is to look at how these new narratives, how they have been modified and they have created. I'm sorry, can I? Oh, sorry, now I've read the, are there any problem with the presentation?
We do see your
presentation.
presentation. We can see your presentation.
On
Okay.
site as well, yeah.
Okay.
And, most of the people can see it, so sorry for the interruption. Okay, please go on.
Yes. So the project situates itself in the global humanities crisis that has hit particularly classics and ancient history. The concept of classics has unfortunately often been used and abused by governments or fundamentalist groups to as a tool for nation branding or like a national identity. And ANCOM tries to challenge these ideas by it challenges the concept of classics as something exclusionist and divisive. So the hegemonic narratives somehow are the focus of the project, because we're going to look at this at the erased stories, and in order to give more nuanced heritage stories. So the idea here is to decenter classics and to make it as inclusive as possible by looking at linguistic minorities and all the stories that have been that are still preserved in the palimpsest. The challenges, of course, well, these are challenges that we expect to face in the next 3 years. One of them is interdisciplinarity, because of course all the skills and the practices are blended together, in the sense that we're going to work in different departments, and so with philology, but also computer science and physics engineering, and yes, oral history and so on, especially in as regard work package 1, which will deal with the manuscripts digitalization. This is a picture of hyperspectral multispectral system that is now used in Verona but also at STU. And one of the objectives of the project is to improve the system in order to read illegible manuscripts. And the idea here is that digitalization never works alone, but it also has to work in synergy with other practices such as cataloging or diagnostic conservation. And this in order to be usable then for education and for inclusion purposes. And then, of course, we're gonna try to work in synergy with other similar projects. So yes, and then another big challenge is, of course, the how to make the data that we will find as most accessible as possible. So we're using the guidelines of the interoperability framework. And as well as regard the website, we're using guideline for web content accessible in terms of like the colors and for a visually impaired audience. We also have a shared library which contains all the material that we will be working on. And it was just a short overview, and it's mostly we wanted to participate so to start getting a little bit more in contact with similar projects. But thank you so much for listening.